Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sadia Zafar from HRAI, and I would like to welcome you to today's session on TSSA Contractor Audit Program. Our guest speakers, Sandra Cooke and Virdi of TSSA, will take us through how and why the Technical Standards and Safety Authority is working to transform to an outcome-based regulator, and how the new transformation will proactively engage with its regulated communities to promote safe practices and increase compliance. Please be advised, all the lines are muted. You will notice on the control panel of your screen a link to ask questions. This is the Q&A feature that you will use. You can ask questions at any time during the webinar, and these questions will be addressed at the end of the session. Also note, the webinar is being recorded and the recording will be sent to you following the session. Now we welcome Sat and Sandra. Sandra, if you could turn on your video and unmute yourself.
I'm not muted, welcome everyone. My name is Sandra Cooke. I've been with TSSA for some time in various capacities. Sat Virdi is also with me today. Sat is probably well known to most of you. He's the regional manager for the GTA area and has been really a participant in helping revise the contractor audit program. Sorry, my grandfather clock is going off. It should be done in a second. I did a webinar for HRAI last March, and a lot of the content that's in this webinar is the same with updates to where we are. As Sadia said, TSSA is on a journey to become an outcome-based regulator. And this really, one of the key roles of it is inspector consistency and is having the regulated responsible for their compliance, right? And treating you more like a safety partner rather than somebody that we just inspect. So for that, I'm just going to give you a bit of our past program pre-April 2020. TSSA audited both for code and regulation, and specifically for code compliance in the field. And this required contractors to set up a number of field visits for TSSA, where we likely would be going into somebody's home and looking at the work that the contractor had done in the past. This created quite an administrative burden on the contractor to set up those visits. It also created a bit of a problem between TSSA, the contractor, and the potential homeowner. If TSSA went back into somebody's house and identified a number of non-compliances, it kind of unsettled the relationship for all three parties. TSSA also charges for the fees. In your registration fee, there is a component that allows for 3.25 hours of an audit. But you can well imagine if we're going to different people's residences, et cetera, that 3.25 can be eaten up pretty quickly. And then thereafter, you would get an additional bill. And the analysis revealed that this did not necessarily change behavior. You're going to see that our compliance rate really didn't move using this program. One of the big things at TSSA is, well, we have our safety imperatives, right? And the stuff at the top of this triangle, this inverted pyramid, is our highest risk. And you can see that's CO risk in apartments and condominiums, fuels risk in private dwellings, and fuel risk in schools, right? And then in the middle, where it's not red, but it's still something we want to monitor, is fuels risk in business units. Now, we all know that TSSA does not have a permit program, nor does it have a licensing program for equipment that's installed in buildings, et cetera. So really, the contractors are really our field agents that are there that can help us mitigate these risks. If you look at our number of occurrences in the last, since 2008, for the last 12 years, about 64% of the incidents and 86% of fatalities occur in situations where the contractor, now this is provided that they're engaged by the owner operator, like i.e. that someone's having their equipment in their home maintained, may be able to mitigate a number of the occurrences. If you look down the list, You see commercial, you have close to 2,000. Industrial, 359, institutional, 566, multi-unit residential, like apartment buildings, 979, and private dwellings, close to 7,000. And in that case, the private dwellings now amount to the highest number of fatalities. And you're the people that are in people's homes, again, provided that the homeowner engages you to come and do that maintenance. And when we looked at our compliance rate over the years, it really hasn't moved very much. So you're looking at between 50 to 60%. And that means when TSSA is doing an audit and we're going to those field visits, we're finding non-compliances that the contractor didn't address. So when we started this, we decided we needed an industry advisory group, right? And so what we did was we convened a group of large, small, and medium contractors and residential, commercial, and industrial contractors to help us revise the program. So when it came down to it, when we looked at the 3 regulations that you work in, which is propane, gaseous, and fuel oil, there's 7 primary requirements that are the responsibility of the contractor. 1, that they only install approved equipment, that their technicians be certified to do the work, that they call for initial inspection by the distributor when fuel is being used at a premise for the first time, that their employees comply with the regulations, and that's a big topic in this particularly revised program, that they report incidents, that they identify action and report of non-compliances. And that's another thing that we're hoping to change how it's being done in Ontario right now. And the requirement to tag equipment. The fuel oil regulation requires an installation tag, and the propane and natural gas installation code requires a pressure test tag. We were going to launch this program in this month. We were going to launch it January 2021, and then COVID hit. And so we looked at, the ability to continue with the old program in light of COVID. We didn't want contractors or inspectors to go into people's homes if it wasn't necessary, or people's businesses. And so the new program allows TSSA inspectors to work with contractors without going on site visits. And we launched this on April 1st, 2020. What we asked our inspectors to do was to conduct virtual audits, typically over the phone or Skype, and explain the 7 requirements. And we wanted this to be an interactive process between TSSA and the contractors. And we want the contractors to be aware that this is what we're going to be auditing to. So, we're using this as an education outreach right now. And then also TSSA would review the contractor's inspector's history. And we decided at this point, because we're really using this as an educational tool, because it's a complete change to the contractor audit program, that we wouldn't issue orders at this time. During the virtual audit, as I explained, the 7 requirements will be explained, right, including what's expected of the contractor. So when we look at the 7 requirements, requirement 1 is that you only install approved equipment. We would ask our inspectors to check this with the contractors. Now, again, this is going forward. We're telling you now this is what we expect from you on the next phase of audits. First of all, to check that the contractor has an understanding of approval. And for example, which certification marks are accepted in Ontario or Canada, right? And also we would check invoices, model numbers, if the contractor has a new product introduction process, and inventory. And by this, we should be able to see that if you're buying a Lennox furnace, model number, whatever, we can check CSA or check UL to make sure it is Canadian approved. No person shall install, purge, repair, activate, service, remove any appliance, equipment, or any other thing to be employed in the handling and use of fuel, which is gas, natural gas, propane, and fuel oil, unless the person is a holder of a certificate for that purpose. So the contractor, as the employer, should be able to demonstrate with their records that all of their employees that are actually doing fuels work are certified for that purpose. And this should be an ongoing check, right? The other thing that the industry group really brought forward in our discussions with them is, as an industry group, these are 20 contractors that are good contractors and wanted to help TSSA. And one of their issues is, what are you doing about either the unlicensed or the unregistered? Or what are you doing about a contractor who says they have 5 technicians, but they're doing enough work for that would take 20 technicians, or they have 5 technicians and they have 20 trucks, right? So they also wanted us to look at the volume of work versus the number of people that are in their employ to do that work. And on the whole idea of the unregistered, TSSA has embarked on a campaign to either find the unregistered or find uncertified people. And I know that our legal department has prosecuted, I guess, several people for not having certificates. And I think some the guys on your team have been involved in that as well, right?
Yeah, in fact, we've done about half a dozen up to this point from July last year.
Yeah, and so I would encourage any of you, I'm also TSSA's ombudsman, and we have a whistleblower service. So if you become aware that you think somebody's working unregistered, or somebody's working, a company's working unregistered, or a person's working uncertified or not certified for that level of work, you can use the whistleblower service, or you can contact me anonymously. The whistleblower service can be completely anonymous, and you can report that, and then TSSA takes that very seriously, and we dispatch inspection to deal with it. I know right now I have these 3 whistleblower cases that have come in from the beginning of the year about uncertified people and unregistered contractors. The call for the initial inspection by the distributor. So where a premises is connected to the supply of fuel for the first time, no person shall put into use an appliance or the appliances that will be there until the distributor has done their initial inspection. And the distributor's inspection needs to include all of the appliances that will be there at the time of occupancy, all right? So you should have a process demonstrating that you're doing this. And one of the big questions, and I created some of the confusion, and I apologize for that, was new home construction. Often the installing contractor is long gone before the call to the distributor. So what we responded back is, it doesn't have to be the installing contractor. It needs to be a contractor that's the appropriate certificate holder that can take responsibility for the installation and the commissioning of the appliances. And then the distributor is responsible for their inspection. So this is a big change. Every person who operates, installs, removes, repairs, alters, or services appliances or works shall instruct their person's employees to comply with the regulations. So this is one, and this also has impacts on the AG, Auditor General recommendation. 2018, I think it was 2018 or 2017, we were audited by the AG. We didn't get a very glorious report. However, one of the recommendations is that TSSA inspect every fuels technician in the province, right? Just gas technicians alone, that's 4,300, 500 gas technicians. If TSSA had to inspect all of these technicians in your employ, that would become very, very costly. And so in the spirit of that, they're their employees, we believe that you should have a quality assurance program for you to check your employees' work, right? Because ultimately you're responsible for it. Just like if TSSA does a bad inspection, we've paid in the past for that as well, because those are our employees. If you have subcontractors, you should ensure that they're registered, that the people that they're using are certified, and they should have a QA program as well. Now, we can't order you to have a QA program, but the alternate is that TSSA will revert to doing the site inspections. And because of the AG recommendation, we would have to check all of your employees' work, which would be quite costly. But in the spirit of the outcome-based regulator, we really believe these are your employees. you should be responsible for their work. And then we would check that you have a QA program, et cetera. Now, we recognize that you're not going to have a QA program. Most contractors won't right now. That's why in the first round of audits, we're explaining what the requirements are, right? So that the next round of audits, you'll be prepared to demonstrate these things to us. The requirement to report incidents. So if you have a CO poisoning, asphyxiation, explosion, or fire, you have to notify the inspector. You do that through the Spills Action Center, and you shall have procedures for such notification. So you should have a process and records that demonstrate that you have been reporting incidents to SAC, right? Also, you can't interfere with the scene, and this often happens because I think some contractors just want to get it fixed and move on. But when there has been an incident that's reportable, you can't interfere with the scene except to make safe. So if there's a fire, of course, you can put a fire out, right? If there's a gas leak, of course, we expect you to deal with the gas leak, right? And if there is a situation where it's not an immediate hazard, but you want to deal with it, then you need to gain the permission of the inspector. And I think that, I think this is, at least with most of the inspection groups, we get very concerned when people do interfere with the scene, because then it's very difficult for us to determine the root cause. Right, Sat?
True, correct.
Okay. This is another, this has been a long-standing requirement that that probably is not fulfilled. So when a certificate holder finds that a work or an appliance or an installation is in an unacceptable condition, either that forms an immediate hazard or a non-immediate hazard, they shall tag it, give notice to the operator and the distributor, right? And that includes written notice. For immediate hazards, you have to terminate the supply of fuel. For non-immediate hazards, you can give up to 90 days. I know Enbridge typically likes it to be 45 days so they can extend the tag. So the non-compliant equipment has to be tagged, and you have to tell the user, operator, and the distributor. When we look at, I talked to Enbridge this morning. Last year, they had 34,000 of these tags submitted to them. We have some 43,500 gas fitters. And if you say, okay, not all of them are actually working in the field, right? So say, you know, even just half of them are working in the field, that tells you that like 1.5 tags is written per technician per year. And we all know there's lots of non-compliances out there. And I think if we can get all contractors doing this on a consistent basis, that will move safety and compliance in Ontario to a new level. And so this is something that I feel near and dear to my heart. And I totally understand that some customers will feel that tagging out equipment is like trying to sell a product, but this is the way that, you know, we can get things to be compliant and safe. And then the last one is the installation and pressure test tags. For the fuel oil, it's an installation tag. Obviously for natural gas and propane, it's a pressure test tag. So the tags have to be affixed to the equipment with the appropriate information that's required in the code adoption document. And you should check this when you're checking your technician's work. At least in my experience with contractors in my home, I found this always to be done, but I know in some cases it's not done. In some cases, some contractors have felt that people are using a contractor number or a certificate number that's not theirs. I have one of those cases right now as a whistleblower case, and it's been dispatched to inspection. So again, if you feel that things like this are going on, please notify TSSA. You can certainly go directly to one of the area supervisors or your local inspector. If you're concerned about confidentiality, you can use our whistleblower service, or you can contact myself. And our whistleblower service is a complete third party. If you want to be anonymous, TSSA has no access to your information. So what do we think are the expected benefits? We're hoping to have consistent audits. Since the inspectors are only auditing to 7 key elements, we're hoping that that promotes consistency, because that has been an issue at TSSA in all sectors, especially fuels, over the years. We're hoping that contractors understand that they're responsible for compliance in their business. Clear accountability, they understand what they're responsible for and how they need to manage compliance, their employees and subcontractors. And we're hoping for a more positive relationship between TSSA and the contractors, because we see this as partnering with you and treating you as a business rather than an entity to be inspected. As I said, we launched the program April 1st, 2020. We've done approximately 1,800 audits of the 8,700 registered contractors. The feedback from industry inspectors has been positive. However, our inspectors, there are a few inspectors that don't particularly like it, and that would normally happen. And I think the whole virtual aspect as well. I think the inspectors like to be face to face, but in light of COVID, I think this has been a way that we can manage the audit program. We expect to complete first audit of all contractors under this new program to be completed April 1, 2023. As you know, we have a 3-year audit cycle. And then after that, we will then be expecting to see actual proof of compliance with these 7 requirements. We do have a new fee structure that I haven't been as involved with the fee structure, and so but I think this is a good opportunity to let you know what's coming May 1st, and because there will be an impact to the fees that you pay to TSSA. So let me pull up. Now I'm going to go to what you're currently paying, and I'll just go under the natural gas fee schedule. So how do I get rid of this? Okay, so when you look at this, so for your registration, whether it's your initial registration or your annual registration, you're currently paying $297, right? And for your certificate, you're currently paying $109, and that's every 2 years. But there's an embedded inspection fee. So for your pre-license, your initial one, there is a fee of $260 for an inspection, and that includes just 1 hour of inspection. So for your initial, if there's just 1 hour of inspection, you're paying a minimum of $557. If TSSA does additional hours, in addition to that 1 hour, you're paying another inspection bill, right? So that's basically how it works. And typically, from what I understand from finance, that the pre-license inspection typically is longer than an hour. For the actual annual, there's 3.25 hours in the embedded fee, right? And that's over 3 years. So you're paying the $297 plus 1/3 of the $584 annually, which is $492 minimum. And that includes 3.25 hours of inspection time. So those are minimums. I do understand from finance that often our inspectors go beyond those 3.25 hours, especially when they were doing site visits. And that then you get billed per hour, which currently is $146 an hour. So for the new fee, effective, I'll go natural gas again, effective May 1st of this year, your certificate is going up to $115, right, from $109. And your registration, so your initial registration, like when you first become a contractor, there's going to be a flat fee of $825 if you have less than 6 technicians. 6 to 10 technicians is going to be $1,195. More than 10 technicians is going to be $2,100. This includes 2 inspections, the initial inspection and a follow-up, right? And the hours are irrelevant. So when finance did this, their outcome that they wanted to achieve was what people are paying now for initials, when we want it to be revenue neutral. So your annual, if you're less than 6 technicians, you're going to be paying $425, which is less than the $492 minimum that you would maybe charge right now. If you're 6 to 10 technicians, it's $745. If you're greater than 10 technicians, it's $1650. So these are the new fees that are coming into place on May 1st, right, of this year. So I guess in 4 months. And that's basically that's basically the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take questions. I don't know, Loretta, if you want me to stop sharing and you can bring up the questions.
No, you keep this slide on. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, you keep the slide on. What I'll do is I'll just read out the questions that we have in line, and I'd encourage others to certainly go into the Q&A and add your questions as well. So Sandra, I have something here. Of all the CO incidents, do you know what percentage is attributed to non-compliance with the appliance installation versus vent installation? There's a part 2, by the way. When you mentioned the technician needs to be certified for the work or registered, is the need only a gas technician, or is training required from the appliance and vent manufacturer as well?
So let's take them in sections. So that's quite a question, right? So do we know, can you just repeat the first part of it and stop, Loretta? Do we know how many of them are?
Yep, the question is, do you know what percentage is attributed to non-compliance with the appliance installation versus vent installation?
I don't have that information off the top of my head. Our risk group would have that. I do know that typically, I don't want to give too much of a general, like typically venting is an issue, right? Right, because if the things are not venting properly, that's how you have CO coming back into the home. I don't know, Sat, if you have more I don't have that type of stats on me, but Sat, can you shed any light onto that?
Yeah, I can sort of give you a sort of brief explanation. It's not just clear cut whether it's vent or manufacture or installation. It's a combination of all 3 combined is what you're going to get with us. I'll give you an example with the fatality that just occurred a few days ago. And when I investigated that, it was a combination of all 3. It was the appliance installation, it was a vent, and also the person servicing it. And so, you know, to answer your question, it's a combination of all 3 rolled into one.
So, Laura, what's the next part of the question?
So the next part of the question was, when you mentioned the technician needs to be certified for the work registered, is the need only a gas technician license or is training required from the appliance and vent manufacturer as well?
So the minimum requirement is that you have to hold the appropriate certificate. So if you're going to do a furnace in a home, you should have a G2. So that's the minimum requirement. There's nothing in our regulations that says you have to be trained by the manufacturer on all the different things. But as a technician, you should, if you're not comfortable with the installation, or if you're not, you haven't done it before, I would encourage everybody to get that type of training. So myself, I'm a professional engineer, right? Which allows me to do any engineering work in Ontario. But really, I'm really only a compliance person, like compliance expert. I know TSSA stuff inside and out. So I would never undertake designing a bridge or doing something like that where I had training some 30 years ago. So so yes, I encourage people, your G2 or your G1 or whatever certificate you hold is the minimum requirement, right, in order to be able to do the work. Sat, you want? Yeah, go ahead, Sat.
Guys, if you're a contractor or employer, you're asking a technician to do a particular function, the onus and responsibility falls on you to ensure that person is trained and qualified to whatever you're asking the person to do. The gas technician certification or the oil burner technician certification only allows you to participate in the industry legally, but Is the person qualified is up to the employer who's asking the person to do that particular function.
Okay, would you like me to go on to the next question?
Yes, please.
Okay. Is it not the case that in fuel oil industry, the installing contractor supplies the distributor with the comp?
Yeah, I mean, well, TSSA is generally agnostic to who provides the comprehensive inspection. It has to be somebody that's qualified for the purpose. So typically, the installing certificate holder would do the comp, and then the distributor. The thing that you have to remember in any of the 3 regulations is they all require initial and 10-year or QMP inspections. Is that's then the distributor's inspection. So if the distributor accepts that inspection and it's not good, then the primary responsibility lies with the distributor because that's their inspection, right? So what we've done for the fuel oil distributor program is we've actually told the fuel oil distributors that you need to have a QA program when you accept those comps, right? Right, because you need to have some level of confidence that that's a good comprehensive, because that indeed is your inspection. No matter who does it, it's still the distributor's inspection. But primary answer is, I think some distributors accept the installing certificate holders inspection, and that's allowed in the regulations.
Okay. What are the requirements of a QA program?
So we struggled with that. So we struggled with that at the contractors advisory group. And so what we basically said was we would expect a contractor to look at every one of their certificate holders that's doing field work, obviously, to look at within the first year, right? So you start your QA program, you look at everybody's work within the first year. And then we would expect you as a contractor to say, okay, Sandra Cooke has been in the industry for 20 years. I inspected her work. It was good. And thereby, I'm going to only go back and check her work every 2 years. So we expect everything to be done in the first year, and then we expect you to have some rationale based on risk, what you found, et cetera, to how frequently you're going to audit their work.
Okay. Okay, so what does TSSA do with the tags submitted?
These are for fuel oil, I take it, because we don't get tags. We don't get tags for natural gas, right?
I don't. Yeah, I'm not too sure.
I would assume it's. I'm assuming what they're just saying is that, you know, when fuel oil, and then when an unacceptable condition is found, you have to submit a tag to TSSA and the fuel oil distributor. The fuel oil distributor has requirements to shut it down and not to supply fuel and not shut it down. Okay. They're not going to suck the fuel oil out of its tank. And what we used to do with those tags, we used to plot it to find out what the state of safety in fuel oil was. And we did that for a number of years. And now we really don't do very much with the tags. It actually should be probably taken out of the regulation. And in natural gas, there's no requirement to send the unacceptable condition tag to TSSA.
Okay. Well, this next question, it might fall into what you were just talking about. Why would a contractor not just not fix the issue rather than writing a tag?
Well, to me, if they're there, and in fact, you can correct me if I'm wrong. If they're there and they fix it, then fine. I don't see if they're there and they see that something's not grounded, whatever, something's wrong, the venting is inappropriate or whatever, and they fix it while they're at site, I don't see a problem. But I think I'll defer to SAP because he more deals with this issue. But
yeah, no, you're absolutely correct, Sandra. The only caveat I would put to that is, depending on the incident, if there was a personal injury or property damage that caused by the incident, then that has to be reported.
Oh yeah, we're talking about clearing a non-compliant site. An incident is a totally different situation. An incident is reportable, but If you're there, I mean, let's.
If you're there, if fixable, then fix it. Move
Yeah,
on.
and fix it. I mean, where you get blurry is that if he has to get a part, right, and that part's going to take 2 weeks,
Exactly.
then I would say that you have to report it, because he may not get back there, or the homeowner may say, no, I'm not going to let you back. You know what I mean? Because you can't, you know, so if you're there and you can fix it, great. But that's not always the case. Sometimes you have to order things to get things fixed.
And,
right?
and you're absolutely right, Sandra. And guys, this is where the I'm going to jump in for a second. Over commercial and industrial technicians who work on the big shopping centers or plazas or buildings, where they're looking for a part, but they don't have it with them, and if they order it or they go to wholesaler, well, you can't leave that job untag them. You got to tag it, and that's where the confusion comes in. And the reason for that is just in case you can't get back to that job, or you're delayed or some reason, the owner might just call another technician in, not knowing that this thing should be turned on yet.
Okay. If I could just make a quick little note to everybody, if you're looking for a question to be answered, if you could put it into the Q&A section rather than the chat. The chat we're trying to use for technical issues. So there's a section called Q&A. Just add your question in there. So I'm going to go on to the next question. Why are we paying more for inspections when no site visits are being done anymore?
Well, you should not be, I mean, and Zach can answer this too. Well, I can't see you have the 3.25 hours that's built in. The feedback that I've gotten from inspectors is that they are using the 3.25 hours. I would be surprised if you're getting a bill in addition to that.
And so far, all the inspections done in my region anyway, since I do most of them, have been in that time zone, and they use the time zone pretty effectively.
I have a question here about QA templates. Would HRAI or TSSA provide a QA template for small businesses?
Yeah, I know that HRAI is considering it. I do know in the oil industry that their association, I'm sorry, I can't remember what the acronym is, they're actually going to be providing services, because they feel, for example, in the north, there may not be enough OBT technicians, OBT1s or OBT2s to do, let's say it's a one-man operation. How do you QA a one-man operation? So yes, my understanding is that HRAI considers it, and the oil association is actually moving towards offering it as a service.
Okay. Just kind of going through. So I have another question about the Q&A program. Here's, let's see. Does the annual fee for registration include inspections?
It does. So the annual fee, the annual fee that you're paying right now includes 3.25 hours of inspection. So that's what Sat and I were saying, is that these virtual audits, I'd be really surprised if you're getting an additional inspection bill, because it doesn't make any sense, right? And typically when we are doing site visits, especially if you were somewhere not in the GTA and you had to have a long travel time between site visits, you could end up with quite a bill above the 3.25 hours. So I'd be surprised. So in going forward with the new fee schedule, includes 2 inspections, right? So the fee that you pay for 1 to 6 technicians, 6 to 10 and above, includes two inspections. And those inspections are the actual audit inspection and 1 follow-up.
Okay. Let's see, as a fuel distributor during a 10-year inspection, what is the requirement for pressure test tags for legacy installations with old appliances lacking a record of installation from the contractor?
This issue came up in Eastern Ontario, and oh Jesus, because they had a whole bunch where they didn't have tags. Sat, do you remember this? This is like 8 months ago.
Yeah, no, this was in Mr.
Right.
Goldberg's area.
That was in Goldberg's area.
Yeah. The issue was that none of the jobs that came on a 10-year inspection had any valid or legible tags.
We'll have to take that. I'm sorry, I must be getting old. I have to take that offline, because I can't. I remember the issue, and it was in the Kingston area. but I don't remember what exactly we did. So it was an issue that came up recently, and we dealt with it, but I can't remember what the resolution was. Sorry.
Okay, so maybe I will connect you with the attendee. Is that okay? Or
Yeah, no problem.
okay, perfect. Let's see here. Can you post the whistleblower contact information?
Yeah, if you go, okay, if you let me show you where it is on the website.
Yeah.
I think that'll be easier. So if you go into TSSA's website, go to I Want You, contact the ombudsman, that's me, right? And you'll see the whistleblower service. And then you can just go online. I'm not going to actually submit a case. And then you can hit file report. And then you have to say, okay, and then you just go by, you check the terms of the use, then you continue. And then you start telling us what the case is. So, so again, you just have to go into our website. I want to go to me, contact the ombudsman, and then go to the whistleblower service.
Okay. I'm just going to go on to the next question. Can a contractor do an inspection gas check on behalf of a fuel distributor, specifically propane distributors?
Well, if they have their LP endorsement, right? It depends on what the inspection. I mean, the answer is yes, but the propane distributor has to be fine with them doing the inspection.
Okay. Why is the new fee structure based on the number of employees?
It was felt that that they broke it down based on the volume of work they're doing.
Okay. And I have another question about fees.
Sure.
Let's see. For annual fees beyond the initial inspection, are the virtual inspection fees built into the new fee structure, or will there be an extra charge when the inspection happens every 3 years?
There shouldn't be an extra charge. All of these new fees include 2 inspections, so I don't see there being an additional charge.
Okay. Let's see here. I have.
I mean, there could be, but it's in the next 2 years, it's hard to understand when we're explaining the requirements why it would take more than 3.25, why it would take more than 2 inspections to do it, because the 3.25 is going away. So I find it difficult to understand why the inspector would need to go there 3 times.
Okay. Due to COVID, how are you dealing with the recertification regarding venting?
I don't know exactly what that means.
I don't know what I don't understand the question. Recertification of venting.
Yeah, I mean recertification of venting. I just don't understand what it means.
Okay, I'll ask the I believe it was Mike Mundell, if you want to type into the Q&A, and I'll take a look at it. If you can just clarify. I'm going to go on to the next one. Let's see. Oh, sorry. When there's a non-compliance issue found, where does the responsibility lay? The certificate holder or the employer?
It lays with both, right? So the certificate holder is typically the one that's going to discover it, right? Because they'll be at the site, and the contractor must have a process for reporting it, right? So the certificate holder tells his employer, the contractor, and the contractor has to have a process for reporting it back to the fuel distributor, et cetera. So it's both of them.
Okay, I have another question here. Some companies in Manitoba are crossing over into Ontario without having the proper TSSA certifications? I don't think this is a question, but it's a comment.
Sure.
So I'm assuming he's probably asking, how is TSSA working through that issue?
Well, if you tell us who they are and,
Yeah.
and they're working in Ontario, we can always issue orders to them in Manitoba. We have no authority in Manitoba, but we can issue orders telling them they come into the province of Ontario that they must be, registered and use Ontario certified people, right? If they know where they are in Ontario, we had a recent case of a gas station build, I think, where it got reported into me, either through the whistleblower service or ombudsman service. There was a contractor coming from Quebec who didn't hold the proper certifications, but he was, because of his gas station, they were still on site, and so we were able to dispatch inspection and issue orders directly to them.
Okay. Just as an update to the question that Mike Mendel had, he's talking about pressure test tags. He was informed that the pressure test tags is not required as per TSSA. And if you need me to read the original question, I certainly can. Due to COVID, how are you dealing with recertification regarding venting? Or maybe
is this the variance for plastic venting? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm gonna have to ask him to send it back. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, no, actually he sent in a couple of different, okay. It's my understanding that 636 requires recertification every 3 years. Is this a TSSA requirement, and has the 3 years been extended due to COVID?
Okay, so 636 is certified, so it doesn't need to be recertified. It doesn't need to be recertified. If people have gotten a variance in order to leave some of the ABS venting in place because of constraints that they can't replace the entire vent system for whatever it happens to be, say it's in a condominium and it goes through concrete, it's just impossible to replace it. I believe that you have to do the pressure test, I think every 5 years. It's a little bit a while, and that's part of the variance requirements. And we haven't given anything on that today. That hasn't been covered by any COVID protocols.
Okay. I have another question here. What is your opinion on the system that Enbridge has that allows contractors to fill and submit a warning tag online?
I think that's great. I mean, I'm not familiar with it. I think it's great. I guess I'd ask the contractors, how do you feel about it? I think it would be easier for you, no?
Okay. Maybe Winston, if you want to kind of throw a question or answer back in, I'd be happy to read it out. When do we need to have a QA manual completed by? Does it need to be reviewed and authorized by TSSA like BPV? And when does the Q&A manual need to be in effect? Okay,
so no, we would look at your audit, and we're not going to be specifically approving them. It's not the same in BPV regulations. That's a requirement for the QA to be approved and for you to get a C of A. When would we expect it to be in effect? So if you are audited today, we're going to be coming back in 3 years. So we expect that all these 7 requirements that we've talked about today would be in place at your next audit. So what we're saying to you is we're telling you about them right now. When we come back and we audit you, we expect to see everything in place, and probably at least for a year. Like, like you've looked at your technicians, et cetera, et cetera. So we're giving you a 3-year cycle to get all of this in place.
Okay. How many companies are taking out oil and switching to gas or propane with no oil licenses?
I wouldn't know.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know, Seth, would you know? I don't think so.
No, I have no idea.
I have another question here about unlicensed or illegal contractors. Should there be a shift in resources focus on catching those in the field rather than focusing on qualified and certified contractors?
Well, I think we have to do both, right? As I explained, the warning tags things, but for the number of technicians, the number of warning tags at Enbridge, it's pretty much is obvious that that's not being done in the field, and therefore we're not addressing non-compliance and safety. However, so that's why we have a contractor audit program, right? I mean, this is the main reason why. However, the unlicensed or then registered or the uncertified is also a separate campaign. And again, if you know of anybody, use the whistleblower service. You don't want to be known as somebody that told us. That's fine. Use the whistleblower service. And right now we are getting reports. As I said, yesterday in Southwestern Ontario, the inspectors wrote back to me, and we have people that are not certified, contractors that are not registered, and there's going to be a whole host of, they're issuing orders to like 5 different parties just on this one whistleblower case. So, and the orders are you can't work if you're not licensed. Like, you have to stop working, right? And then our legal department is actively prosecuting these people as well. So please, if you know about it, let us know, right?
Okay. If a contractor is completing inspection of its employees' work, does this not cause a conflict of interest? Not as likely to point out compliance issues as a third-party inspection?
It's up to you. If you want a third party get out, that's the best way to do it, but that's quite a cost. It's up to you. Like I know with some fuel oil distributors, they've set up a QA program, but they have a third party come in and do an audit of it. If that's great. If you would like to do it that way, but as a minimum, we are expecting you to be QAing your place.
At the same token, Sandra, I don't see why that would be an issue, because if you're hiring a person or a technician to carry out your policy and procedure and whatever systems you have in place, then why would you expect any different from that individual? And why would that individual object for you going looking at that work?
Okay. I have one here. Does the distributor's initial inspection talk about the first time the fuel, piping and furnace is activated, or is it every time a new and unique appliance is installed? In other words, if I install a fireplace in a 20-year-old home, do I need to call for an inspection?
No, you do not. It talks about fuel being introduced to the premise for the first time.
Yeah.
Right. So, so for example, if I change from fuel oil to natural gas, of course, Enbridge is going to have to come in. But if I have the natural gas in my home, I replace my furnace. No, you do not need to call. It's when fuel is introduced to a premise for the first time.
Okay. What percentage of the total number of installations should be audited?
Well, I more go to the technician, right? So if you have a technician that's, at least this is in my mind, if you have a technician that's only installing water heaters, right? I would expect you, at least on the first round of your QA, to at least go to an installation where he's done a water heater. But if you have somebody that's doing a furnace, a water heater, and a boiler, you may want to at least do a couple because they're doing quite different appliances.
Okay. Okay. What if we are to return the next day with the part? Does a tag still need to be issued?
Yeah, I think if you can't fix it, and I'm happy to be correct. If you can't fix it while you're there, you have to tag it because the homeowner may not allow you back in, or the business owner or whoever, right? So it sounds really bureaucratic, but it happens, right? Or the part gets delayed.
Okay. How does a contractor commission the equipment, set pressures without turning on the meter?
And again, it depends on what kind of job you're involved in. If you're involved with the new subdivisions, that's what we just addressed with a whole bunch of contractors and new home builders. But if you're if you're dealing with a commercial appliance or a commercial or industrial institute, then you got to work with the utilities to work hand in hand to ensure that you're getting the gas on to set your pressures and your safeties.
Will TSSA in the future do some site visits to see whether this new model of audits improves compliance?
I don't know if I can answer that right now. Like there may be some contractors that prefer us to do the site visits, and then we'd have to look at all of their technicians. That's what, if they wish it to go that way, and that's their prerogative, that's their choice. I don't know. I don't want to answer that at this time, because I mean that's a ways out. So we may not. I can't answer that right now.
Okay. We have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to try to get through as many as possible. If a certificate holder enters a premise and sees obvious infractions and they are not a registered contractor, can you still red tag it?
Well, you're supposed to. The requirement is a certificate holder or a contractor. So it isn't. So for example, if I work for Ford and I have a G1, but I don't work for contractors, I work for Ford on their heat treating equipment or whatever, yeah, they have an obligation to tag it up. It isn't just a certificate holder that works for a contractor.
Okay. Okay, here
It's
I have one.
that you concur with that, right?
Yeah, no, that's good. You're absolutely correct.
I have a question here from a gentleman. I was employed in the propane industry in BC later in the 90s. They operate on a permit system that worked very well. With the permit system, everyone was accountable for their own work, not distributors taking the liability for all the work. Has TSSA looked at this style of program in lieu of the current one?
Yeah, I mean, the permit program at TSSA has been discussed. It really requires regulation changes, and it just didn't get momentum, right? And there are some issues like ESA's permit program. I understand from our is being looked at as not being the ideal choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's been some deficits looked at it. So it has been discussed. It's never been discussed to the point where draft regulation changes have been put forward. It also is pretty difficult in this time period to think that, you know, we would have to collect a fee for each permit, and that's another tax on the homeowner. So yes, it has been discussed. It hasn't really gotten anywhere, and there are some concerns about existing models such as ESAs that has a permitting program as well.
Okay, what documentations or pictures shall be on file for completed installations?
There's no requirements in the code that you have to have, you know, pictures, etc. I think it's good practice, because I think if something does happen to that installation, you can demonstrate that you did a good job. And I know some contractors are beginning to do that, or some contractors are doing that. I think that's up to your business choice. Sat, do you want to weigh in?
No, and again, it's going to be an individual choice of how that's handled.
Okay, I have another question here. Will the QA program be similar to what is in place for the refrigeration piping? What is the process involved with getting a QA program approved by TSSA, and what are the fees involved?
Okay, so we're not going to be approving your QA program. We're going to be doing, we'll be doing an audit, right? Be part of the audit that we will be looking for you to have a QA program, and that it's based on examining all of your technicians' work. So there's not going to be a fee leveled for us to approve a QA program, because we won't be specifically approving them. In BPV, there's a requirement for those QA programs to be approved by the regulation. So we won't be specifically approving them.
Okay, I have one more question. Close off. Will technicians be required to complete an upgrading course when renewing their certificate as stated in Regulation 215 P3 Section 4.4?
So we have done upgrade programs over the years. I think the last one for gas technicians was probably in the early 2000s.
Yep.
So typically, I know with liquid fuels, we required an upgrading program a couple of years ago because the code had some significant changes in it. I'm not aware that there's an upgrade program on the horizon for natural gas, propane, or fuel oil. I'm not aware of it at this point. Sat, have you heard anything on that?
No.
Yeah, I'm not aware of enough. I mean, the director of the program has the authority to require an upgrade program. I'm not aware that there's any of them, that are in any under consideration at this time.
Well, I think this, we're at 1 o'clock, and in light of time, we'll close off the session. I want to thank Sat and Sandra for attending or presenting this session. With these Q&A that's still left over, would I be able to send that off to TSSA, and we can compile some generic answers or an FAQ for the people who attended this event?
Sure.
Sure,
Okay,
I think so.
that's
Good idea.
wonderful. Okay, well, stay tuned, everybody. I'll be sending an FAQ with everybody's questions answered as best as possible in the coming weeks. And again, thank you so much, Sat and Sandra. Really appreciate your time today.
No, we appreciate the opportunity to communicate this. I mean, it's not often we're able to talk to this many people, and we think it's a really good way to communicate what's happening and some of our thinking.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.